Hello and welcome. I'm Mary Ann Alger, and I'm going to moderate today's Lunch and Learn webinar sponsored by Women for Madison. I'll talk a little bit more about Women for Madison in a few moments. We have about 250 participants today, so we're very excited about that. We're going to learn more about how COVID-19 has impacted JMU athletics. We have two spring sports represented. We have softball and lacrosse, one fall sport, volleyball. We have an outstanding panel of women to talk about JMU athletics, including two coaches, an administrator, and a student athlete. So I'm going to start by asking each of you to introduce yourselves briefly. We'll start with Lauren Steinbrecher.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having us here. My name is Lauren Steinbrecher. I'm the head volleyball coach here at JMU, and I've been in this role since 2010.
Okay, Jen Phillips.
Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you joining us. It's a wonderful, overwhelming number that's tuning in today. My title is Associate Athletic Director, Senior Women Administrator. I know a lot of that is a mouthful and confusing, but basically I oversee compliance, academics, and the leadership program for the athletic department.
Great. Shelley Klaes-Bawcome.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with everyone today. What a great opportunity. Like Mary Ann said, my name's Shelley Klaes-Bawcome, and I'm the women's lacrosse coach. And I just finished up my 14th season.
Odicci Alexander.
Hi, everyone. I'm Odicci Alexander. I play softball here. I'm a pitcher, majoring in sport and recreation management. I'm from Boynton, Virginia.
Great. Well, we thought we'd start with the big question that's on everyone's minds right now. What is fall going to look like in terms of intercollegiate athletics? Jen, could you tell us any updated thinking and planning that may be happening even as of this morning?
Oh, Mary Ann, I'm sure it's the same as in your household. It's a daily conversation around the dinner table, right?
It is.
We're constantly having conversations. So from the moment that we had found out that everything was going to be suspended, I remember driving to meet the women's basketball team when the announcement was made that we were canceling the tournament. And then within days, we had to move to virtual as an institution. So from that moment on, we've been preparing for what it will look like and how do we reopen our institution to the students and the student athletes. So I will say I learned that day that the information is as good as the moment that it is. So I don't want to share anything at this point in time because it could change by the time that we're off this call. But I will say we're doing our due diligence. We have meetings, quite a few, probably daily, with either the CAA or internally or the institution to be prepared to open our campus back up and have athletics.
Great. Well, be sure to keep us informed.
Absolutely.
And expect a lot more questions over the summer. So I'd like to talk to the two, or ask the two coaches right now to talk about how has this pandemic impacted recruiting. Now, recruiting for spring sports is different. The timeline is different. The calendar is different than for fall. So Shelley, could you comment on this about how your recruiting for lacrosse has changed and what that looks like now?
Yeah, with high school sports and club sports getting put on hold, just like we have, recruiting, and then NCAA setting some dead periods, recruiting has really kind of been put on hold. The real only opportunities that we have right now are to maybe correspond with coaches and watch video of athletes. But there's no live recruiting opportunities. And so, you know, we're working hard to try to solicit video. We're trying to determine when we might be able to get out to live recruit again. But, you know, most of our focus is kind of working with our current student athletes to determine what they're going to be doing to manage the eligibility year that maybe has just been given back to them, because whatever they decide to do could have impact on maybe some of the student athletes that have verbally committed in the 2021 class. You know, if somebody should choose to stay and we can support that financially, it will have impacts down the road on some of these athletes that have verbally committed. And so we're just trying to piece through that right now, working with the seniors, who's coming back. The NCAA is giving them a waiver for their aid. Juniors, sophomores, freshmen, they all have an opportunity, but it's about working together with the coach to determine whether or not we can support that endeavor.
So it sounds like it may take some time for all of this to work out.
There's a lot of layers, and I think everyone's focused on the seniors right now because it was really hard for them to lose their season, but the reality is it impacts every class. And depending on what happens with them, it impacts the people coming after them, and that's the student athletes in high school right now.
True. And Lauren, how about fall sports and volleyball in particular? How has recruiting shifted?
It's been an interesting year for sure. Kind of going off what Shelley said, our number one goal for this fall is to have an NCAA tournament and a conference tournament so that we're not running into those same concerns that they're having with senior year and classmen are going to come back and how that affects recruiting. But having said that, we are fall sports, so the majority of our recruiting does happen in the spring. And it's been really tough because we missed a whole season of recruiting since spring break. And so there's a lot of athletes that are juniors in high school right now that are really freaking out and really nervous because not only have they not been seen, but they haven't been training. So as soon as we do all get the chance to go see them, they're obviously not going to be playing at the top of their game. And then on top of that, we generally get to see freshmen and sophomores at this time too, to start evaluating so that when we do make the decision, we're able to make a good decision. So it's been interesting.
Do you have any advice, Lauren, for high school volleyball players? What should they do? They're not playing, you can't see them, they can't see you. How should they try to keep up their game as best as possible?
That's a great question. I think just controlling what you can control. And at this point, it's doing home workouts, body weight, or if you have something better, making sure you're jumping on good surfaces as much as you can. Mm-hmm. And then touching a volleyball, it's obviously a team sport, but every little bit that you can do, maybe against a wall or ball hand contacts, will make a difference when you get the chance to play again.
Okay. Let's think back to the time in March when we all got news that this pandemic was going to shut us down. Odicci, you were injured at the time. You were out for the season. How did you feel when you got the news that the season was over? What were you doing? How did you feel, and how did your teammates feel?
Well, we had just drove down to Florida. We were about to play a tournament in Florida, and we were practicing, and the coaches, seemed preoccupied, or they just seemed like, something was up. So, of course, we're a little worried. We had no idea, what was going to happen. But after practice, they huddled us up and basically told us, we're going home. And when you get to Harrisonburg, you have to go to your original home, back with your family. And of course, we were all devastated. And at the time, like, you didn't know how to feel, because you're like, what is happening? And more than others, the seniors, because we really didn't know if we were going to come back or not. And there were a lot of unknowns at the time, the 15-hour bus ride back, just thinking about what's going to happen. We didn't know what to expect. It was tough. So.
And Shelley, how about the lacrosse team? You all had a match against Cornell that was canceled. Did you have any inkling at the time that the rest of the season was going to be gone?
Yeah, that was a crazy 48 hours for our program. We were on Wednesday, we were heading into our first 2-game swing, Friday, Sunday, Canisius in Buffalo, New York, and Cornell in Ithaca. We had designed that to be able to prepare for our typical Friday, Sundays in CAA play. So in that Wednesday practice, for the first time, we actually talked about a 2-game swing. Normally we keep it 1 game at a time. And I will never forget, I actually threw out there, I said something like, mark my words, we will come home with 2 wins, because we were sitting on 498 wins at the time for the program. And we were pursuing to be only the 5th program in all of Division I to hit 500 wins for program history. And we were hungry for that opportunity. And then on my way home from practice on Wednesday, I received a call from the Cornell coach crying that our game was going to be canceled. And then that night, just the fear that comes through you, having to reach out to your team saying, ladies, We're hopeful for one game, packed for one game now. Bus still leaves at 8 a.m. I'm texting Kevin White, are we really going to Buffalo, New York at 8 a.m.? He said, you're getting on that bus. We're going to see if we can get this game. So the first three, I remember standing on the bus at 8 a.m. saying, if we can get one game, let's play one game. You know, it's just, what can we get right now? Can we get a game? And we're going to get on this bus and we're going to drive and we're going to hope and pray that we can get that game. And with social media these days, as we're driving up to New York, information was coming out from the CAA office, from the NCAA office, before we had even heard anything from administration, before they had heard from people. So it was really hard to manage the girls' mentality because they're getting information before I'm getting information, and I'm trying to be the one that seems to know and be knowledgeable so that I can guide them. But needless to be said, we were at we had planned to be at a rest stop about halfway up the road to get off and stretch because it was a long bus ride. And we laughed that in that grassy knoll, that was not a grassy knoll, we learned that our season was likely to be over and we had to head back to Harrisonburg. And it really felt like a funeral. I mean, it was so confusing. It was spring break, so there was nowhere to go. The girls didn't have dorm rooms. The dorms weren't open. We're telling them to go home to their families. We met at my house that night for dinner. Vito's was lucky. We were lucky we got food from Vito's. We all sat in my backyard and ate together to try to help each other work through it. Because within, 5 hours time, boom, we're done. And just trying to give them the right mentality that we can't control this. So let's just focus on what we can control, and that's our health and our safety right now. So let's get home to our families where we can feel loved.
That sounds really intense.
It was.
Mary Ann, I must say, I mean, to Shelley's point, all of our spring sports, this was happening over spring break. So I just want to say campus was absolutely amazing in helping us because the dorms were shut down and facilitating to allow them to get in and get their belongings because, on a dime, they had to pack up everything and go home. So I just want to say residence life and off campus was so supportive of athletics.
They are great. They really are. Any other comments, Jen, about how did you feel when you started to get all this news?
I don't think for me there was time to feel anything. As I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of campus meetings trying to determine where we were going to be with the spring semester. It was the second day of the women's basketball tournament. Our team was doing well. We were hopeful that we were going to win. So I stayed back Wednesday for the campus meetings and then jumped in the car Thursday to meet the team for a shoot around and pregame meal and our competition. So I literally pulled on to Elon's campus to get the news as well. Called Coach O'Regan and said, I'm not going to bother coming in and exposing myself at this point in time. So I turned the car around and headed right back to Harrisonburg at that point in time. And my phone was nonstop. I know I got a call from Coach Laporte on the field during the practice that Odicci was speaking of what do you want us to do? What should we do? Trying to figure out lacrosse, trying to work with residents' lives so that all of our students had somewhere to come back to. Women's tennis was on the road. So for me, it was just nonstop calls, sports supervisors trying to communicate together, as Shelley said, to get the information out so that the student athletes and the coaches were hearing it from us and not social media. But that's a whole day and time that it's impossible to keep up with. So a lot of times the athletes are hearing things and sharing with us before we can get ahead of it. So for us, it was trying to remain calm and stay ahead of it and share the appropriate information.
Lauren, if you're like me, you had no inkling back in March when things started to be canceled that this I just kept thinking this is a spring thing. And now we don't know what fall will hold or even second semester of next academic year. Did you have any inkling at all that this may creep into the fall sports season, or did you just think, well, this is for spring sports, I'm so sad, but we'll be all right?
Oh, no idea. I remember our last practice before spring break. I was like, wash your hands, don't touch anything. I don't want you guys bringing anything sick back. And of course they didn't get to come back. I remember Dr. Stinkston coming into my office and saying, this may be 2 to 8 weeks. And I'm like, 2 to 8 weeks? No way. So I clearly had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it was tough. At this point, I want to talk just very, very briefly about Women for Madison, today's sponsor. Women for Madison sent you an invitation to the webinar, and you can go back to that invitation and find the website information and learn more about us. We are a giving circle. It's not a club or a clique. The definition of a Woman for Madison is twofold. One, you have to be a woman. And second, you make an annual donation of any size. Any size. Our slogan is celebrating women, supporting students, and sustaining JMU. The Women for Madison philanthropic gifts support the entire university, not just women, not just female students or female-oriented programs. We started about 7 years ago, and we're going strong, and we have a lot of programming and activities and very active donors who are taking the lead in their own families to make charitable decisions. So we'd love to have more of you join us. The next, also we're planning more lunch and learn webinars in the future if we can't gather in person for a while. This seems to be a good format. The next question for the entire group is the training regimen. Let's start with Odicci. Tell us about how you're training, and are you still injured? Are you still coming off an injury? But in general, how is the softball team keeping fit, keeping in shape, and what are you doing since you can't play games?
So I know most of us have like apps on our phones, whether it's yoga, stretching, body squats, whatsoever, but just a lot of at-home stuff, things you can do at home. With softball, we're a big lifting team, so I know it's tough for us because we're used to the weight room, we're used to weights, and everyone doesn't have a weight room or big weights in their house. So just being creative, whether you use your pets, a jug of milk or whatever you have to do to stay in shape. It's tough because now I feel like I'm losing muscle, and being injured, it's even harder because you're like, what can I do? So really all I'm doing is running, keeping my legs in shape, because that is a big thing for a pitcher. But yeah.
So are you dedicating the same time every day to working out? So do you have a specific structure for that each day?
So forth, yes. There's really nothing else to do. So just working out, eating the right things, just getting ready for another season, hopefully. Okay.
And then how often is your coach checking in with you?
Of course, they check in all the time.
What is that?
Zoom call meetings.
Okay. Is that a weekly check-in?
Usually, yes, ma'am.
Okay. How about lacrosse? What is training looking like right now for the lacrosse team?
Well, I think we're all on the same page where, this is a time to get creative, and it's a time to focus on yourself. And we're very lucky. We have a really strong culture of work outside of practice. And I think that's probably the hardest thing right now for coaches, is that we are relying on our athletes to train on their own. Our strength coach is amazing, and Coach Epstein has been really creative, like Odicci was saying. And he sent a lot of suggestions on different things that they can do with maybe things that they might find in their yard, or things they might find in their basement, or they might find in their garage, to try to create that weight strength training opportunity. We're also very fortunate that our game is a stick and ball game, and so there's a lot of fun things that you can do with your stick. And that's really important right now, is that you keep your stick in your hand, and you get yourself out there. But our sport is interesting in that we just finished, technically this was championship weekend this past weekend right now. They just replayed the ESPNU played the championship game 2 nights ago. And, normally this would be an off time for our team, that give them an opportunity to recover, because these athletes can't train this way 12 months out of the year. They have to give their body a little respect. And so our girls right now are working through a combination of trying to find some time off, but not lose sight of what they're used to, and that's putting their mind and body in a stressed position. So a lot of our girls are really focusing on off season, and that's mental training, a lot of meditation, a lot of visualization, just trying to do anything they can to continue to build their game, because confidence is so important. And if you're just sitting around doing nothing, you're not building confidence.
True. Now, as a coach, are you and the coaching staff able to look at video?
Well, right now we're not watching our own players' video specifically, but yes, we can watch game film. We can send them game film. They can watch game film. They have access to all of it. And that'll probably happen a little bit further along in the summer. Right now, trying to give them a little bit of space so that when we come after them, they want to work.
Okay. And how about volleyball? What does training look like right now? What are you telling your student athletes, Lauren?
Well, training is a huge concern for us, being a fall sport, knowing that normally we're really amping up right now, getting prepared for our grueling season. And so we're going to go, I think, 22 weeks from spring break until report day, where we haven't, it's been illegal actually to watch them train or have anything mandatory. And so just giving them, they have the body weight circuit, they have jumps they should be doing, and I know they're all doing them, but it's huge for us because injuries are relevant in our sport, especially the jumping and contact with the floor, and concerned about their tendon capacity and just ability to come back and play safe. Obviously, none of our athletes have taken 22 weeks off since they were 10 or 11 years old.
Right.
And so right now, honestly, for the fall, I'm way more concerned about the health of their body than our ability to play good volleyball. But we have 8 hours of care that we can do with them a week, so we can, correct me, is that right, Jen? 8 hours?
Okay.
Make sure I'm saying things correctly.
That is correct. My dog's going crazy, so I had to mute for a little bit. Sorry.
So we can do video with them and things like that. Just like Shelley, we'll amp up more with our manual and training things, video closer to season. But right now, we just are really encouraging them to get the volleyball touches and to work out.
Well, in volleyball, the floor, the surface is, well, unique. You can't do that at home, you know, in the cases of most of the students. And you mentioned you're concerned about knees and jumping and landing, and what's the best thing you can do to simulate a volleyball court?
Well, just grass for jumping and dirt, just trying to stay off concrete or anything that doesn't give. But then at some point, we're going to have to get them cutting more in preparation for season. And so they're going to have to just be really mindful of their landing and the way their body absorbs that impact.
Yeah. Now, remind me, what is the first match? It's in August, right?
Mm-hmm. August 20, the last weekend in August 24th, 5th, something like that.
Yeah. And is that scheduled to be a home game or an away game?
It's currently scheduled to be a home tournament.
A home tournament.
And
Okay.
our report day is August 9th. So that's kind of the date I'm looking forward to. Hopefully
Really
it happens.
day. Really important day. Jen Phillips, let's talk about the NCAA's decision to allow spring sport student athletes another year of eligibility. And what does that mean academically, financially, and for the entire recruiting landscape? Talk to us more about that.
Yeah, as Shelley alluded to earlier, it's so much bigger than just the seniors coming back. I think we were all just so focused on, you know, year being ripped away from the current seniors, and that's how their career was going to end. And I know we were all saddened by that, but it is a trickle-down effect. So in essence, what the NCAA has said is they were granting this year back to every student athlete on the team who participate with a spring sport. So what that means is each student athlete is granted the opportunity to participate for 4 seasons, and they had to do that within 5 calendar years of initial enrollment. And the NCAA has granted that each student athlete will get 1 year back, so it's as if this season didn't happen. So now our coaches are having to evaluate who they were recruiting, who is coming back. Some of the seniors had amazing job opportunities, so it was not an option for them to come back. So that was a decision they were having to make. Others like Odicci will be coming back, and we're thankful for that. So it was quickly sitting down before the registration process for fall classes to determine where are they, where do they want to go? Do they want to still graduate on time or pursue a graduate degree? Would they rather pursue a second undergraduate degree and be a double major? Many of them were looking at minor opportunities on campus that would just strengthen their major degree that they were getting. So it was a lot of conversations with coaches and the student athletes and as a staff of figuring that out. And then, as you had mentioned, with everything comes a financial tag. So with this one current class, the NCAA only granted that financial aid waiver for 1 year. So what that means is the next upcoming year, we would in essence have 2 individuals sharing one designated spot that we had. So what that means is in essence, you're giving 2 scholarships for 1 spot. So we have to make up that deficit of what we had not anticipated having in terms of financial aid.
Well, the reason behind that is because the current seniors in high school had already signed national letter of intents.
Correct.
And so that money, it's not a verbal promise, that's a signed agreement. And so any senior coming back, I think the NCAA did the right thing to waive their
Absolutely.
aid, but it doesn't change the fact that JMU has to figure that out. And JMU did an amazing job
Absolutely.
supporting NCAA's decision. And I'm just so thankful for our administration and our leadership.
Yes, I am too. And Odicci, I mean, you were injured, you were out for the season, and now you get another year. So what does that feel like?
I mean, it's a great opportunity. I didn't expect it, for that to happen. So just embracing like the memories that we did have and all of that, like I couldn't be more thankful to get another year back, even though I was already coming back. But
what are you going to do academically next year, Odicci?
Of course, I'll be picking up another minor. Haven't really figured out what that might be yet. Me and my academic advisor are looking into that. But mainly, I'm just looking forward to another season.
Yes, we are. We all are. So back to the point that Jen was making about JMU has to come up with the money. Shelley made that point too. JMU has to come up with the money to double fund some of these scholarship positions. That amount is going to cost the university that ruling is going to cost the university about $300,000. And I mean, for the most part, I would say the university is happy to do this. We're happy to have all these athletes back next year so they can have another season. But it will cost about $300,000. And so if anyone in the audience today is in a position and is so inclined to donate to this fund, the Proud and True Fund, you can find that at the jmudukeclub.com, and you can make a donation there. We would really appreciate that. Again, this money goes to cover the scholarships that have been committed for the seniors who will be able to return for another year. So let's talk a little bit more about what is your typical day looking like. Odicci, you've kind of already touched on that. We'd love to hear that answer from the 2 coaches and Jen. We'll start with Jen. What does your day look like right now? A lot of Zoom meetings and WebEx calls, I suppose?
Lots of virtual meetings, which is nice because you still get the person interaction of seeing other people this way. But I was sitting in on a staff call. So my staff and I meet still every week through the same means. And we were discussing how we could help student athletes. Like what were some of the things that they were facing? What was information we could get out to them? And one of the staff members had mentioned Zoom fatigue. And for me, like that hit me right square in the eyes. Like, let's hear more about that. I know the student athletes had to be going through the same thing. All of a sudden, all of their courses were being offered that way. So they were being forced to the computers as well. But this is very much what a typical day looks like for me. Today, I have 4 of these meetings, including this one. And that's typical. So then at the end of the day, I'm frantically trying to answer all the emails that I missed through the day, make sure that we're keeping everything running, communicating out everything that we learned in the Zoom meetings, because I think it's really important to keep everybody informed, especially this difficult time, because nobody wants to operate in the dark and everybody's wondering all the same questions. So we share what information that we're receiving, whether it's a national call, a CAA call, an internal call. we're pushing a lot of that information out. So I know our coaches are probably overwhelmed with the number of emails that we're sending out to them, but thankful that they're staying informed. And then through all that, I'm also trying to space out time to be a homeschooling mom and figure out algebra all over again, and helping my son do science experiments. And as I mentioned earlier, controlling 2 dogs that, want to attack every day. So it's a lot going on in the home, but, happy to be doing it, and thankful that we're moving in this direction, and hopeful that we'll be back up and running in the fall.
Lauren, how about you?
We, compared to normal, quarantine life has slowed down a lot. We have weekly team meetings where we try to get information out, and we obviously have calls with our conference and national offices. But other than a couple, obviously recruiting calls, but other than that, it's been nice. We've been riding bikes and cooking meals and reading books and exercising, all those things that are good for you, trying to get in the habit of doing them.
Okay, and Shelley?
Similar to Lauren, I mean, when you don't have a team to coach, you're not allowed to watch them participate. They're not allowed to communicate to you what they're doing. There's no team to recruit. We do have more time, and I always say, if someone were to look at me and critique me, she works too much and she's not available. And so for me, it's so nice to maybe have a little bit more downtime, a weekend off. What is that? A weekend off? Time to really just try to be a mom, figure out a workout routine. I watch my girls work out all the time, but I sit there and blow that whistle, being able to do it myself and get myself mentally healthy. It's so wonderful. I think Lauren said, she's making dinner at 4 sometimes. It's just a different lifestyle for us. And we know this is not going to be this way forever. So I'm trying to enjoy it instead of be frustrated by it, because in athletics, we just don't have this kind of time. And when you're a coach, you're always working for other people. So to put some time and energy into yourself is really different, unfamiliar, but I'm loving it.
And both of you coaches have children at home. And
yeah, we're doing the homeschooling thing too. And I'm trying to get my boy into middle school. He's going from 5th to 6th, and my daughter is moving from 2nd to 3rd. And they're old enough that they can do their work, but they still need help. So having to try to relearn basic skill, basic academic again, has been so interesting. Conjunctions and how to read a clock. And it's been funny when I don't understand the questions and I have to call my mom to help my daughter. So it's been fun, but I really enjoy being there in the process, and having the opportunity to build that relationship with the children.
Sure. And Lauren, so you have one child who's 7 and probably old enough to have some idea of what's going on. There's a virus out there that's making people sick. You have a 2-year-old who probably doesn't know what's going on. How are you juggling all of that in your family?
Well, it's just crazy town in a great way. The biggest thing is getting the 7-year-old exercise and moving around, because when we're in the house all day, he's supposed to do about an hour of school a day. And, we hit 2 of those a week usually. We're here, we're surviving, we're loving the quality time. Can't ever get it back.
Absolutely.
I'm going to address a couple of audience questions at this point. And one question that a couple of audience members have asked is, we're all aware of mental health being a top concern among college-age students in general, but among the student athletes, what is there anything that we're doing to look out for their mental health? I guess Jen would be the best person to address this.
So we were fortunate enough to be a little bit ahead of the curve on this, and we started a group that's called Duke's Let's Talk, and it's a self-support group that is maintained with one of our athletic trainers. So they have stayed active. They have run meetings still virtually. They push information out through social media for our student athletes. As administration, we talk about this a lot. The student athlete health and well-being is what we've built our department off of. It's our biggest concern. So we want to make sure that we're having that communication. So keeping that open line of communication with the student athletes, trying to get feedback. It's funny that this question comes up because we just talked today about sending a survey out. We sent one out previously to try and get a gauge on where they were, the student athletes, how they were handling things. Our academic advisors are really on the front line with them. They had done a phenomenal job from the start. So I just want to give a shout out to my staff. From the moment we found out that we were extending spring break to the point that, okay, this is going to be a permanent thing through the spring, we quickly got on these Zoom calls to figure out how we could support our student athletes. So we've been running virtual advisor meetings. We've been running virtual tutor sessions so that the student athletes were able to continue to go strong throughout the semester. And to brag on our student athletes, they did a phenomenal job. This was the best semester that they have had academically. So I just want to say how proud I am of each and every one of them for staying focused, for trusting us, for staying in the process. I know it was not what we expected. None of us knew kind of what we were doing along the way, but they trusted us that we were going to guide them through the end, and it had come out so strong for most of them. So we just keep those touch points in place, and hopefully the student athletes remember that they're always our main focus, and they always have a point of contact back through the department. And this month is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. So if you look at our Dukes Let's Talk Twitter, they've been pushing out a lot of information, and hopefully it's not a spoiler alert, but they'll be getting a bingo competition here this week that SAC has come up with that they'll be sending out to help with those little reminders of what to do to stay mentally healthy.
Great.
And Mary Ann, as coaches too, we'll send out wellness surveys and things like that each week, and obviously have contact with them to pick up on any trends too.
Okay, good. Yes, Jen, you mentioned that this was a very strong semester academically. I mean, the honor roll that I saw is just huge. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of names on it. Odicci, for you had to start taking classes online. How was that? How hard was it? How well did you adjust to that?
Well, I did make the honor roll. Let's start there. Don't know how that happened, but I did.
Hard work. You did great.
Okay, but to me personally, I thought online was pretty tough because, I mean, you're used to like getting instruction in class. So it's just, you raise your hand and you can ask a question. With the COVID-19, it's like you have to email and you have to wait for a response. And it was tough because you just weren't on campus. Who doesn't want to be on campus? Like, I want to be on campus. But yeah, the toughest thing was just the receiving instruction from your professor face to face. I'd rather have that than, emailing and waiting for a response, or Zoom call, which nothing is wrong with Zoom call. I like Zoom call too, but still, like, I like the face to face, connections with your professors. That's something that we didn't have, really.
Yeah, I'm sure all JMU students and probably all college students everywhere feel the same way. My own daughter is in college. She's actually sitting here in the room with me.
Oh,
Yep. And she's nodding her head because she had to wait for responses, email a question to a professor and wait for a response. And it is very hard. It's not ideal. So I'm going to take another audience question.
And yet we still managed to have 100.
Yeah, on the honor roll, on the dean's list.
Yeah, 125. Yeah, student athletes. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yes. I'm going to take another audience question right now. Someone is asking if it's allowable, if it's permissible for student athletes to get together in small groups to the extent that they live in proximity to each other. Is that permissible for them to get together in small groups and train together if they're socially distanced?
It's a great question. Right now, all the volleyball athletes are at home in different places. I know the administration is encouraging our student athletes not to come back to Harrisonburg. And then it's also difficult in that if they were in the same place, the gym's not being open. So we haven't had any luck with that, but I don't know if lacrosse or anyone else softball has.
Well, it's not like Lauren said, the JMU athletes aren't together. They're in their homes. So if they have friends, neighbors that they're comfortable sharing close space with, little things like that are happening where you might get with one other person and you have somebody who can maybe play defense on you, but it's a person that you're comfortable with, that you know, that you see often. I think everyone's kind of, you know, wondering when we can start kind of moving freely, being around people, but everyone's still, I think, a little bit on edge, which I think is good because we want to start school in August. But, you know, trying to find someone to get out and maybe get a sweat with, somebody to pass a ball with, somebody to shoot on. Otherwise, you're using walls and backstops and, you know, just trying to be creative.
Our players have broken 2 of their parents' fingers.
Oh, no.
So I think that we're going to be out for a while.
Oh.
We have been encouraging the student athletes because we do have many that are still here locally as well, living in their apartments. So those student athletes, to the coaches' points, we've encouraged them to think of themselves as a family unit. So using the same directive that we're getting from the government and the health officials of that's your home unit, and those should be the individuals that you're quarantined with and you're working out with, and discouraging them from getting together in any kind of other groups.
Okay, good. Shelley, on a very personal basis, you personally were infected with COVID-19. You powered through it. What can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, back in Easter weekend, I had 2 nights in a row of just symptoms. The first night was just body aches. I had done quite a few I'd spent hours in the yard doing some work. One of them was pulling leaves out of a fountain, and I thought I wasn't working on being ambidextrous enough. And so my right side was in a lot of pain. And then Friday night was a lot of GI tract stuff with constipation feelings. And then all of a sudden it became breathing. And when the breathing started, the heavy breathing, the painful breathing, the laboring breathing, I got scared. And so by Saturday morning, I ended up having to drive myself into the hospital. I never made it into the hospital. I was put into the tent. I was the only person in the tent. I was asked about my vitals. I was told my vitals were fine. And I was told I should assume I have it and go home. And I was handed a flyer. And it was a really confusing, scary moment because of all the fear factor put around this COVID-19 and the concern of the lungs and what could happen and the breathing. And in that moment, I was laboring. Luckily for me, I actually threw up in that moment. So I was given some nausea medicine to drive home with, and that allowed me to drive home. And then I had, again, very lucky, I have some doctor friends in town here that I can trust and rely on, and they became my caretakers. Calls throughout the day, reporting symptoms, you know, just trying to work day to day. It probably took about 3 to 4 days where I was attached to a bed, couldn't move, couldn't read, couldn't watch television. Just, you know, a person that in 14 years has never taken a sick day was completely shut down. I'd say day like 5 to day like 8, I was still on a liquid diet, couldn't eat anything, and was just trying to manage my symptoms of major GI tract problems, headaches. Really only had the breathing scare one other time, and I think at that point maybe that was anxiety related, but it was scary. Probably took about 2 weeks to get through it in total, and then I had that week of trying to become symptom free so that my children could come back into my home and it was a safe environment. I'll never forget cleaning this house scared about passing germs and that, you know, God forbid I'm somebody that passes a germ that could hurt somebody. You know, everyone that I spoke to wanted to know about diagnosis and source. And they were 2 things I just didn't have an answer for. I never got tested, so I didn't really clearly have a diagnosis. Considering what I went through, I just succumbed to, yes, that's what that was. I'll never really know. And then the source, I mean, as much as we work and someone's going to tell me, once I'd gotten over the season being canceled, someone's going to tell me I have to stay home, I'm okay with that. I travel all the time. I work all the time. To be forced to stay in my home, I was fine with that. I wasn't going anywhere. I was only going to the grocery store maybe once every other week. So all the questions coming at me about how did you get it really started to, it was hard because I felt like I was being judged on my maybe lack of responsibility or lack of care. And the reality is this is a very contagious thing, and I have no idea how I got it. I never knew anyone that had it. I never knew anyone that got it. So luckily for me, the symptoms didn't spread and it stopped with me, and I feel very good about that fact. Trying to control what we can control right now, but it's not a lot.
Well, we are all so grateful that you pulled through, and it is a very scary reality indeed. Very, very scary reality. We do have time for a couple more questions. I'm going to take an audience question plus one other one. People are curious if there's anything new or different that you've done with your restructured day. A couple of you have touched on, oh gosh, I've got some time at home that I'm enjoying. Is there a project you've taken on? Is there a new skill you've tried to learn? A couple of you have mentioned, oh, you're trying new recipes or whatever. And Jen is relearning algebra for her honors algebra for her daughter's sake. But what else? Just what else comes to mind? Have you read an interesting book or taken on an interesting project? Odicci, anything?
I really have not done anything special.
Oh, that is fine. How about Jen, besides algebra?
Well, I feel like I'm putting my algebra to use at least now that I know volume and happen to do square roots and all that. So I think I'm ready for my first HGTV experience to come up. So I laid all new hardwood floors in my upstairs in my house, just my father and I. So that was quite the experience. And then I renovated the deck off the back of our home. So I've been really hands-on, and I felt like it was a good experience to do with my kids so that they could see some hard work, and that there's things that, yeah, it's nice to hire somebody, and I would have loved to done that, but we had plenty of time to do some updating on our own. So we've done some house projects around the house together.
Okay, Lauren, anything?
I would just say just being normal is, I'm learning how to be normal. Like your weekends, like we can mow the grass, we can cut, and just being with the kids. That's very time consuming in a great way.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Well, for me, I'll just say real quick that I also have done a lot of home projects, and my back patio was under moss, and I power washed it, and now I have this beautiful outdoor space. And I'm not being enabled with computers. I downloaded my own Zoom. I got my own virtual background up. I'm having to do it myself and not have my assistants do it for me. Those of you that know me know that's a big deal. And then just like we said, I'm doing yoga in my backyard when the sun sets. I'm being normal, which is so amazing.
That is great. That's good to hear. The next question, I think I'll ask Jen this, but anybody who has information, you can chime in. It's a bit of a complex question, and the question is about the different athletic conference alignments. Is there uniformity among the different conferences, as far as we know, about what different schools are going to do in the fall?
So I'll say we definitely are having conversations. I think we're very fortunate that Commissioner Joey D'Antonio has relationships with individuals of other conferences. They get together on conference calls much like this. They did it before COVID had come into place, and they're continuing to do that. So we're definitely having those conversations, trying to take best practices. Our goal is to try and still ensure a fair and even playing field across the country. But honestly, it's really difficult, even just within our own conference. Each school, each state, where we are within the process of getting through this virus is just so very different that it's going to be virtually impossible to roll something out evenly across the board within our own conference, let alone make alignments with other conferences. But I will say a lot of the conversations has turned to maybe regional scheduling. So we talked to other conferences in other schools that maybe we would have normally not played, but they would be more within our region now. So as we look at that, like I said, our goal is just to ensure that we can bring our student athletes back to campus and put on the best experience that we can. That's always been our goal. So whatever we can do to set up a schedule and an experience that is beneficial to them, we're going to give our support to our coaches in that manner.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of getting prepared for the reality that in this year, there's probably going to be some inequity that we just can't control. And it is what it is. It's going to be a different year. And so rather than fight it and be angry and frustrated with it, we might as well buy in so that we can get the most out of it and be successful.
Okay, good. Another audience member wants to know what the university is doing to maintain external relationships with our partners and donors during this time. Jen, do you want to start?
I will. I'll say we have a rock star behind the scene helping with this event, Meredith Crawford. We have her and Cassidy Clemens that have run our Duke's Lead program. And just like everybody else that was quick to figure out how we were going to keep things running, the two of them made sure that that didn't fall to the wayside for our student athletes as well. So we transitioned what would have been our speakers on campus to a lot of TED Talks, virtual information to the student athletes, but specific to the donors, they really got a mentorship program up and running this summer with our donors where they were partnering them with student athletes, mostly within the field of the career that the student athlete would like to do. So we were trying to really focus on that. So for instance, with Odicci, if she wanted to be a coach in the future, we would pair her up with one of our donors that was currently a coach. Or if you were working in the health profession, we would pair you up with a donor in the health profession. So I would say this has helped us to probably push that forward and keep those connections going.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in about that?
I mean, I think initially everyone was also trying to be cognizant and aware of this is a stressful time financially for everyone. And so more building relationship focus than, you know, having a lot of asks, because it is hard for everyone right now. I know even for us within athletics, it's the first time I've ever been concerned about job security, besides if I were not to win games. You know, athletics has always been the beast that will never be affected. And because of this concept of being around people, we're in a people profession, you know, it's been trying for us. So I think that we've been trying to be cognizant of other people probably being in that same position and just being respectful of putting the focus on building relationships.
Great. Well, we're about to wrap up. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I would like to say, with me just coming off of that comment, there are a lot of athletic departments that are having to drop sports or put coaches on pay cuts or furlough assistant coaches. And the fact that James Madison's leadership has been able to provide opportunity for us to continue moving forward is just an incredible. I'm so honored to be a part of this kind of athletic department.
I just want to again thank everybody who tuned in, 250 plus, that's amazing. We appreciate your support behind the scenes. As Shelley said, even if you're not able to make a monetary donation, the way that you're supporting, you know, us and the student athletes, I don't want it to go unsaid of how appreciative we are of that. So thank you. As Mary Ann alluded to, this is an ongoing conversation. We're trying to keep up with it. And the best that we can, we will feed information back and keep everybody posted on where we're going and what will be happening with JMU athletics.
Very, very good. Well, thank you to all the panelists and participants. I just have a feeling that once athletics starts up again, that our venues are going to be packed. Now that could be good and bad in terms of social distancing, but I mean, I just cannot wait to go to football, basketball, volleyball, soccer, everything else in the fall. And I will definitely be there wearing purple.
Me too.
Thank
All
you. We appreciate you too, Mary Ann.
Well, thank you to everyone, and go Dukes.
Go
Go
do.
Dukes.
Thank you.